We mentioned the Chazal, which Rashi cites, which is based on the Mechilta. Loma Nispa Parshas Din Parshas Mizbeach. What does the Torah juxtapose? The portion of Dinim, which is this week's portion, Ela Mishpatim, the laws which pertain to the Bezdin, how to establish all the aspects of the Sanhedrin, to the portion of the Mizbeach, which Parshas Yisro ended about regarding the Mizbeach. Lo Maloch Shetosim Sanhedrin Eitzel Hamikdash, that the Sanhedrin had to be within the Beis Hamikdash, within the sanctuary. Alongside the sanctuary was the location where the Sanhedrin Gedolah, the High Court of Israel, would convene. The question is why. So we discussed one approach yesterday. There's a law that when the court hears testimony from witnesses, they have to hear it directly from the witnesses themselves. So what happens if the witnesses speak another language, which the court doesn't understand, and you have an interpreter who interprets testimony to the court? It's not valid testimony. The court has to hear it directly from the witnesses without any intermediary. As a result of this, the Sanhedrin themselves, they were proficient in 70 languages, because whatever language the witnesses would present the testimony, the members of the court would understand the language. They didn't all speak all languages, but they all understood the languages. Not only that, so you can imagine what level of intellect, how accomplished these people were. They have to be proficient in 70 languages. In addition, Chazal tell us, although a person is not permitted to study many aspects of knowledge, idolatry, witchcraft, many things, but they had to be adept in all these issues, all these subject matters, because the Torah says, a witch, person who engages in sorcery, and the person is forewarned, they deserve to be put to death. And the other things, different types of idolatry, all the protocols of idolatry. The court had to be proficient in all these things. If not, how could they evaluate the information to rule whether the person is a sorcerer or not a sorcerer, or an idolater or not an idolater? So they had to be adept. So the level of knowledge and the dimension of personality who these people were is something not to be able to relate to. In terms of the level of genius and the level, there were troves of knowledge which we can't even fathom who these people were. Very often, people who are of this dimension of person, they're very much subject to arrogance, to gaiva, which is a problem. The Gemara tells us that Ein Torah niktas elami shedaitu shveva. Only a person who's truly humble is one able to acquire Torah. Ein Torah miskayemes. A person will be a repository of Torah only within a person who's daitu shveva, a person who's truly humbly spirited. Otherwise, it doesn't remain, or he's not able to process it properly. So here the Sanhedrin, people of such accomplishment, such dimension of personalities and capacity, how could they not be touched? They're only human. Moshe Rabbeinu was Anav Mikol Adam, but how could people of such accomplishment not be affected and impacted by gaiva? We find that Doeg Hadomi, who was the antagonist of David HaMelech, the reason the Gemara tells us he was called Doeg Hadomi, he wasn't an Edomite, but because he was a young man, he would actually cause the elders of the Sanhedrin to blush because of his greatness. But he himself, he passed away midlife at the age of 35 or less than that. Why? Because he went and he spoke Lashon Hara against David HaMelech. And he was tinged with this arrogance. And that's the reason why he failed. And ultimately he died because of this. So how do we somehow create a setting that despite the greatness of these people, they're somehow humbled? That somehow they have a recognition of who they're not, and as a result of this, they become the receptors and the conduits for all this knowledge to be able to adjudicate and render verdicts on all these different issues. The Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah and other locations, there's a principle of Ein Shvus B'Mikdash, that there's certain rabbinical laws that in the Beis Hamikdash don't apply. All rabbinic laws are fences. One, do you need a fence? Because a person the times that he doesn't have full cognizant of the moment, therefore you have to create fences that he should not cross that line. In the Beis Hamikdash, because when a person would walk into the Beis Hamikdash, into the temple, especially into the sanctuary, immediately you'd have a sense of God's presence. And that sense of God's presence was so overwhelming, you had a reverence, and immediately you were humbled in the presence of Hashem. The location itself, you were able to sense God's presence, and that humbled the person. So because the Sanhedrin themselves have to adjudicate and offer verdicts and have to maintain that level, that connection, how do they maintain the humility? Where do you put the Lishkas HaGozis, the convening chamber of cut stone, where they would convene? Right alongside the sanctuary. This is Lifnei Hashem, just as the korban that you brought in the Migdosh was Lifnei Hashem. The Sanhedrin, when they would convene, it was Lifnei Hashem. As a result of being Lifnei Hashem, they would attain this level of humility, and as a result of that, they would become fully functioning.
Yeah.